Hey Tubies, it's Psychic Bob. Well, I'm sitting here today and I've been reflecting on my mystical Lemurian crystal. Isn't this beautiful? This is a real Lemurian crystal. Lemurian crystals are very popular these days because one of the things they do is they open up and align the chakras. They have a great power that goes through them, and just having them near you really helps. But there's also another reason why people are finding these to be particularly powerful, and that is because a lot of people are finding that the Lemurian crystals help them with channeling, and especially for people that are trying to connect with the galactics, these are the beings from outer space. These Lemurian crystals seem to be a very powerful battery to open up that channeling connection. Now, a lot of people these days are getting messages literally from the stars. They're getting messages from Pleiadians. Some people say gray aliens, some say reptilians. There are a whole host of alien beings that are inhabiting the cosmos. The truth is, we are not alone. A lot of people say, oh, we're alone. No, we're not alone. But a lot of people are finding that through meditation and channeling and using these crystals, they're able to make a connection with beings who are trying to connect with the earth. Now, I'm all for that. Now, I myself have done channeling. I've received messages from Pleiadians, and I'm a big believer in it. But there's another area of alien contact that I want to talk about today, and that is the idea of contact that is not invited, contact that is not wanted, contact that is invasive. A number of you have been writing me recently, and you've been saying, Psychic Bob, is alien abduction a real phenomenon? Does it really happen? Do people literally get taken out of their houses and abducted by aliens? And the answer is, in a short, a short version, yes. Yes, it is a real phenomena. Now, let me kind of go back here, because there are, in a sense, two types of abduction. There are willing abduction experiences and non-willing. Now, the willing type isn't really an abduction, it's more of a visitation. Back in the 1950s, there were a number of people who were claiming to have encounters with aliens. In those days, they were claiming that the aliens were from our solar system, from the planet Jupiter, Mars, Venus. I believe that all the planets have some form of life on them. And these were situations where somebody would, for example, be out walking in the desert or in the forest. A lot of these happened in California. And literally, they would see a flying saucer, an aircraft, literally come down and land on the ground. People would emerge from it, speak to them, and the people would be invited to go aboard the craft. And many people did this. It's interesting because if you read the accounts, a lot of the people said, well, first, of course, they were shocked and, just like, whoa, they couldn't believe this. But as they met with the aliens, they realized that they were not scary, that, in fact, the aliens that were coming, particularly during the 1950s time period, were humanoid. They looked literally like us, like you couldn't tell. So people weren't as afraid of them. And so they would go on the craft and go up and be shown the cosmos. And it was a positive experience. In a sense, it was an abduction because they were approached and actually invited aboard the craft. Some of them say, I have read cases where they said, well, they were invited, but on one level, it almost felt like a little hypnosis, like they couldn't really resist. It's like they were a little bit compelled. But at the same time, they said those were not scary experiences. Now, we have a whole different class that emerged in the later part of the early 60s and through up to today, really. And those are the unwanted abductions. Probably one of the most famous cases is that of Betty and Barney Hill. And I'm going to put a picture up here of Betty and Barney Hill for you. Now, the Betty and Barney Hill case is particularly significant because during their abduction experience, they were brought aboard the craft, and a lot of what happened did not come out till later, until they were under hypnosis with the therapist. And while under hypnosis, Betty and Barney Hill were able to draw detailed star maps that they were shown aboard the saucer craft. And what's fascinating is that some of the information that they revealed through their drawings was not yet discovered by scientists. And in the coming years after their case, some of the stuff that they were shown and explained was later revealed. So pretty fascinating stuff. However, this is a case where the abduction was not consensual, and for the most part was pretty terrifying for them and left a lot of trauma. And so this again raises the whole issue of the ethics of alien abduction. A little more closer to our time, there's another famous abductee, Whitley Strieber or Strieber. I never know how to say it. I always said Strieber. He has a famous book out called Communion, a true story. And this is his story of his abduction experience. Now, he was a writer, wrote a number of fiction books, very successful as a writer. And he details in this book how one night he was at his cabin in upstate New York or Vermont, somewhere up north, and he was abducted. And over time, he discovered this was an ongoing experience. And in fact, there are witnesses. His own family were part of the abduction. All of them have been through therapy and recounted the exact same story. Pretty freaky and amazing stuff. Now, what's interesting is this picture on the book, he had an artist create this, because he said that the creatures he saw had the most strange almond-shaped eyes. And as we look at this now, and having studied a number of the cases, this is clearly one of the gray aliens. It's so interesting because at one point, Whitley said that when this book came out, he was actually at a bookstore, and a gray alien actually walked into the bookstore, but was dressed up and covered in scarves and sunglasses. But he clearly recognized it. So it's kind of interesting, because I do think that the gray aliens are the ones who are behind the majority of the abduction experiences. So if you want to learn more about the terrifying aspect of what this really is like for somebody who goes through it, you need to get this book, Communion, A True Story by Whitley Strieber. Excellent, excellent book. You know, and this brings me to the next part of our discussion, is that, you know, in my past 30 years, God, I'm getting old, 30 years of psychic work, I have had a number of abductees come to see me. Now, what's very interesting is that I never put myself out there as an alien abduction expert. I was simply a psychic. But I had people come to me, and they would come and they'd say, I don't know where else to turn. I got to tell you what happened to me. I think you could at least consider and believe me. Well, as I have listened to time and time again these stories, and it's been a number of people over several years, one of the things that strikes me as absolutely fascinating is that none of the clients that have come to me for readings about this know anything about each other. They've never met, they have no connection. Yet, all of their stories are pretty similar, almost down to the detail. And the abduction experience generally goes something like this. People are in their bed at night. They may wake up, have a sensation of numbness in their body or paralysis. They may wake up hearing footsteps or murmurings in their room, only to be greeted, many of them, by a sight which will sometimes they'll awake and have literally standing over them something that looks like this. Unable to scream, they're generally paralyzed, at which point they find themselves either blacking out, or sometimes they'll literally find themselves floating above their bed. And this is where it gets freaky, and I've had a number of people tell me this. They will literally pass straight through a solid wall to the outside of their house. Now, for people who live in high rises, like myself, some of them have literally told me they float out the window, and they're literally, 600 or 800 feet above the ground, floating in midair. But most all of them have told me there's a kind of a beam of light that's coming down, and they're generally able to see above them a ship. Now, the gray aliens who seem to be behind this all seem to, at least nowadays, have triangular ships. Some people have told me that the ships are saucer-like, but most of them report large, giant black triangles with a center point of a beam of light coming out. So the truth is that, I can tell you personally, I've sat down face to face with people who have no reason to lie. They're not getting any publicity. In fact, they don't want people to know. And they've all told me the same story. So as a psychic, I have to tell you, when I step into that energy of that situation, I can tell, one, that it's absolutely real. So if you're saying, is that really real, Bob? Does that really happen? The answer is yes, it really happens. Now, I am, I try to reserve judgment, but I have to tell you, in my personal belief is that these gray aliens are not our friends. They are not our allies. I know there are a lot of psychics say, oh, the gray aliens are space brethren. That's not been proven to me. And I'll tell you, the vibration that I get from them is so otherworldly and so different. It's kind of like you can't even compare it. Their thought processes and ours are not, we're not on the same page, let's put it that way. They have an agenda that is not necessarily to our benefit. Now, most people do seem to return relatively physically uninjured. But what is very interesting is many of my clients have shown me literally on their bodies scars from experiments. They seem to want to, they have this device where they literally scoop out skin cells and they take a big chunk of skin and it leaves a permanent scar on a lot of people. It's like a scoop mark. I've actually sat and looked at people's scoop marks up close and can tell you that this is also consistent across many cases. What are they doing? You're saying, well, what is the purpose of these abductions? Well, I do believe that one, it's simply to study us. It seems that the gray aliens, and I can't speak of every other alien race, but let's just focus on the grays for right now. The gray aliens seem to be predominantly interested in a genetic experiment. I've heard from abductees themselves have told me that the aliens told them that they are not able to reproduce, that there was a nuclear war in their world, and genetic deformations happened. Their DNA was destroyed, and basically they recreate by cloning. Now, however, their current DNA is literally a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And now this goes back thousands and thousands of years, way before even life on Earth is when they've been doing this. Now, for any of you who know anything about DNA, one of the reasons why there's a big argument against cloning is that it's believed that DNA, whenever it's replicated through a cloning process, breaks down. It loses some of its strength. And so this is why, when we've seen cloning experiments like Dolly the sheep several years ago, maybe some of you remember that, the sheep only lived a few months or a few hours, didn't live long. It's because the DNA was not strong enough to support its life. And so it broke down quickly. So cloning has its issues. Now, on Earth, we have not yet perfected cloning. But the aliens seem to have done pretty good because they've been able to go thousands of years and sustain themselves. But even now, they're getting to the point to where their DNA is just not viable for another reproduction. And so what they're doing is it seems that they have found that our DNA and theirs are pretty compatible. Some abductees have come to me literally and said, Psychic Bob, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I had eggs taken from me by an alien and they created a hybrid child. I know. I've literally had women sit in my office and they are not crazy. These are professional. Some of them have been lawyers, doctors, teachers. And they've said, I discovered later I have a child out in space who's aboard a spacecraft. Now, if you were to say that to the average person, they'd think, oh my God, you're crazy. But I'm telling you, as a psychic, I've picked it up. I had one lady come for a reading once, and I kept hearing a voice speaking to me, like literally channeling through me. And it sounded like a child. I said, there's a young boy talking to you. I said, but this vibration is so very different. And this lady looks me dead on. She said, I know. She said, I get the same voice. This is my child who's with the star people. And you know what? She was absolutely right. And it really did happen. I got it. So, when we talk about, the abduction experience, I do believe predominantly is a genetic study of DNA acquisition. Are the gray aliens going to kill us all? No, it doesn't seem like that. but they are using us without our consent. And that's the ethics issue I have, because as humans, we have the right to consent to that. And they take away that right and treat us as if we're just lab rats. Now, of course, from a karmic place, we could all say, well, look, Bob, don't we humans just take animals and use them? We take rats literally and put them in a lab and study their brains and their motions. We take animals like chimpanzees, put them in a zoo and study. So from a karmic place, it's true. We do that ourselves. You know, we're an evolved species, and we sometimes enslave other species. So is this karmic? Could be. Maybe it's another superior race now saying, now you're the lab rats. And I think from a karmic and a spiritual place, it does make us have to think about how are we treating life on this planet? You know, how do we like this being taken and used? Very interesting point. I think there's a whole ethics discussion in this. Now, let me also say, you know, in terms of the abduction experience, the thing that I have noticed is that there, as I said earlier, we're talking about back in the 1950s, the aliens were predominantly humanoid. And their purpose in inviting humans aboard their craft at that time was, one, to show humanity that there is life on other worlds. They were also here at the time, shortly after World War II, because we were leading the race in the atomic weapons, atomic warfare. And many of the alien worlds are very concerned, and still to this day concerned, that we are going to mishandle this technology that we have, these nuclear capabilities. And they have said, if we destroy our own planet, it's going to destroy life throughout the cosmos. Because can you imagine, we blew up the Earth, it would destroy the moon, it would throw all the other planets out of their orbits. Major, major, major destruction. And if there are lives on these other worlds, as I do believe there are, then, you know, the visitations had a purpose. Now, what I'm trying to figure out still, and I haven't yet fully figured it out, is that we're in a whole different scenario now. We're not seeing the people from Mars and Jupiter come anymore. Now we're having aliens from the far side of the galaxy, Zeta Reticuli, come. We occasionally still get the Pleiadians and the, you know, the other humanoids that come occasionally, but not like we saw in the past. Predominantly now, the visitations seem to be from the Greys, and their intents seem to be hostile. Now, I did have one client who told me that when they were being abducted by a gray alien, that a Pleiadian came in and stopped the abduction. I believe that, you know. You would have to actually sit down with these people one-on-one. And I may be able to, in the future, get some of them to come on and be open and be interviewed. But right now, I'm respecting their privacy. But I think that if you could see them face-to-face as I did and feel the energy, you can see the sincerity and the truth. These people are not crazy. They're not lying. And I have one belief, which is that it's all absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So if you want to know, are these real? Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about the alien abduction phenomenon, definitely get this book. I recommend it. Maybe next week we'll do some readings from this and we'll talk about it. Here's another book that's very, very interesting. UFO Abductions in Gulf Breeze. This is down in Florida, I believe it was, where there was a lot of sightings and abductions. And in fact, their abductions instead of triangles were more like the saucer craft. And in fact, here's some pictures. I don't know if they're coming through, where you can actually see. Now, these are drawings up at the top of the saucer craft and then down at the bottom. Now, as I said, it's getting rarer and rarer. I don't hear many people talking about saucers these days. Here's some more pictures of the saucers over that area. It does seem that we've switched to the large triangle, or they have shifted to the large triangle craft. And so that's what we're seeing now. But I'll tell you, this is something that we need to watch. And, you know, as I said in my annual predictions, this year, 2019, we're going to see more and more sightings, so much so that in 2020, the governments of the world are going to be very hard-pressed not to acknowledge it or discuss it. Here's another book I also recommend, Extraterrestrial Visitations. And this is by Preston Dennett. extraterrestrial visitations. And you can see there's a big gray alien there behind him. This one also has a gray alien. Both of these books contain the accounts of gray aliens. Now, we'll have to probably do a whole nother video, but there are actually many types of gray aliens. Maybe next week we'll talk about that. But there are a class that are actually the tall gray aliens, which are different than the ones doing most of the abductions. The tall gray aliens tend to work with the Pleiadians. They're very enlightened and very kind. It's the shorter kind of drone workers that are taking people out of their beds, and they're a little more scary. And within the grays, as I said, there are multiple races. So, some of them have tan skin like that, and some are more gray. But they all have a kind of a taupey tan skin of some sort. But anyways, I think next week we're gonna talk about the specific classes of grays and what all that means and how that works. But today I just want to come here, talk about abduction phenomena, how it occurs, what it's like, and let you know that yes, it is real. The people are not crazy, they're having this. I have directly talked to them and seen them. I've seen the scars on their body, which interestingly, as I said, are consistent across cases of people that have no connection. So are these things real? Absolutely yes. Okay. Now, should you be afraid? No. Honestly, if they want to take you, their technology is so advanced you can't resist. They can literally stun you and take you up on a tractor beam of light, and you're going to go. But, and again, we'll talk about more of this next week, I think. Some alien abductees have told me that their experience was positive, that they weren't scared, or they may have been initially terrified, but as they spent time with the aliens, they started to realize that they do want to connect with us, and they have spiritual messages for us. So this is a whole nother phenomenon, and we'll probably have to do a whole video just on the spiritual phenomena connected with alien abduction. That'll be, we'll talk about some of that also next week. But for today, I want to share this with you. I hope this answers a few questions. And check out these books. And if somebody tells you they've been abducted, don't write them off as crazy, because there's a lot more of it happening than I think we even realize. Anyways, guys, I've enjoyed being here with you. I hope this helped you. I love you guys. Sending blessings to all of you. Keep it here at Spirit Channel. I'm going to put some more pictures here at the end, so just keep watching, of some UFOs and aliens, and hope you'll enjoy that. All right, be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. Oh, what do we got? Saturday spiritualist class and seance. You don't want to miss it. Be here. You guys are best. I love you. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, may you all always blessed be. Oh, and don't forget to see yesterday's video if you didn't see it. Like this video, favorite, share with your friends, hit subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow. Blessed be.